We're live. We're live. We're doing this thing again. A little 30-second interlude in which I look at myself and look at how big my ears are. Happy Saturday, friends. Is it Saturday today? Slowly we're keeping, or we're losing track of the days as we're not doing our daily live streams anymore. That was my primary source of knowing what day of the week it was, is counting happy Monday, happy Tuesday, happy Wednesday. But ever since we finished our 40-day sprint, we've been doing just Saturdays and a couple of Wednesdays. But today it's Saturday, so welcome to today's tea practice.
Eric.
Today we're going to be talking about an experiment we did over the last 3 days in which we only drank a single tea, different sessions of it, but we only drank one tea. And it's this guy over here, Danong Tea's Jade Leaves 2019, a Shang Pu'er. No, this is not sponsored. We just really like this tea, and we were really interested in learning from it. So let us talk about why we did that experiment today, what we learned from it, and also, spoiler alert, I'm going to ask you to do this as well, whether it's today or later on in your tea practice. It's really interesting to do. Yeah, so let's say our hellos. Let's see. We got Marjolaine, it's nice to see you. Good evening from far out there in Europe. Eric, Jeremy, bonjour. The Rose and Dragon, Joan Ulrich Ceramics, Trekkie Buddha, Joshua, how's it going? Nice to see you. And Eric today, who's Tea Sleuth, is fostering a dog for a week. So congratulations, Eric. Having a dog is wonderful. We don't know how we would go through our quarantine situation without Bella. She's just a ray of joy, and it's been great. Let us know what you guys are drinking today. I asked you all on the Discord to please bring a Shang Pu'er, maybe just kind of share in the communal Shang Pu'er drinking, maybe some green tea. It's the same thing, right? So let us know what you're drinking, and then we'll get started. We have Mel from Akasakura Yuki in here too. Proud Transbian. It's been a while, my friend. Hope you've been well. Diana Raquel, welcome to today's Street Tea practice. Hope you all are doing well today. So, again, today's topic is this experiment that I mentioned briefly on the tea practice email that went out this week. So, for those of you who are signed up to the newsletter, it's not so much a newsletter than it is kind of just the techniques and theories that we explore kind of on the work in progress side. And I think it's a really, good format for us to discuss the stuff that aren't necessarily completely set in stone. So if I tell you about, Cha Chi or how it feels like to do a 3-day sprint with tea, I'm not sure at the beginning if it's going to work or not. I'm not sure if the world's going to end. I'm not sure if my taste will change. I don't know. So in doing this experiment, it was inspired by Jeffrey McIntosh, who we did an interview with in April for the Pu'er Love Challenge, in which we asked him, how do you study and purchase pu'er? And one of his answers was when he is trying to invest in a pu'er cake, he'll actually spend 1, 2, or 3 days. I think he says for himself he spends 3 days on a cake or a tea before he invests in a lot of that tea to see if he really likes it. And so he says, spend a couple days, up to 3 days with a tea, drinking no other teas, and then see how it makes you feel. And, I'm just a big proponent of listening to people who know just a little bit more than we do. I mean, Jeffrey knows a lot more than we do, but even someone who knows just a little bit in another field of tea than you do. You need to listen to that person because they've done something before that you haven't necessarily covered. And if that's his practice, he does it for a reason. And so it's taken me a while to follow up on that, but we did that today, or these past couple days. So ever since Thursday, to try to test Jeffrey's method for evaluating pu'er, we haven't drunk anything else but this 2019 Jade Leaves from Danong. It's a Shang Pu'er. Let me show you the cake. It's a small cake. We picked up this cake in 2019 at the Northwest Tea Fest. So it's 100 grams of a cake. It's not really a big investment. But, Jeffrey's ideal is that, okay, whenever you're trying to evaluate pu'er, you don't necessarily have to buy the cake or the tong immediately. You can if you want to, But and then there's that joke that floats around is oh, in Russia or China, a cake is a sample. Just the cake, just buy a whole cake so you can really get to know the tea. But I think there's some merit to that, and also some merit to what Jeffrey says, which is you don't really need a cake. If you just have 20 grams, 50 grams, 100 grams of something, test it out to see if you like it, not just at the very beginning, but also later on in your journey. Because, I don't know, like, I used to my favorite ice cream was mint chocolate chip for like a good 3 years. And then now, like, it's okay. Like, I don't think I've had chocolate chip in a bit. And, what I'm trying to say is that your taste can change so much over the lifetime of a cake, over the span of a couple days. So I think it's a really brilliant method that he's introduced to us. So, yeah, here's a proof. This is the tea that we had from yesterday. We actually only had 3 sessions with this tea because this tea is so potent that it lasts us all day. So me and Stephen are drinking it together. This is from yesterday's session, and it lasted us all day. And it was really lovely, and we drank it until like 12:30 at night. And then right afterwards, I slept, went to sleep, no problems. So yeah, we've been working on that. So we'll talk about a little bit more about why and how and what we felt. Joshua says that he wants to make a trip to Vegas. You should. Before we move to Taiwan. We'd like to see you. Claire, how's it going? Joe, T-Road from Brazil, I imagine. Asulaiti, it's nice to see you. Baniel's FY, Coppa Jack, welcome to today's tea practice. Let us know what you guys are drinking. I'm going to hit this guy just one more time. This is from yesterday's session. I just want to see if there's anything left in it. But yeah, we've only had this one tea for the last 3 days. And I know for some of you who really like to drink different kinds of tea, that might sound a little insane. I'm thinking about you, Jeremy. Jeremy sometimes drinks 6, 7, 8 teas a day, it seems like. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not that Jeffrey in his interview is trying to tell people not drink a lot of tea per day. I think it's just that shaking our routines up a little bit is really helpful to find something that we might not have seen before. So when you're sampling a lot, when you're trying different teas every single day, when you're doing a lot of samples, lots of small 10-gram samples that you kind of experiment with during the course of the day, then you're going to develop your breadth, right? Your range, your flavor library. That's really good flavor library stuff. And you're putting so many entries in your flavor experiences when you're doing that, but then you're not really getting as deep into the tea. And when I say you, I mean also me, because this is actually the first time in my 10 years of drinking a while now that I've spent 3 days with only one tea. This is the only time. And I can't believe I haven't done it before. We're just, we're so lucky to live in a world, I think, that we have so much access to so many teas. We can pick whatever tea we want. I mean, I can pick a Bhutan tea, I can pick an Indian tea, I can pick a Nepal, Japan, China, Japanese North, Japanese South, Japanese East, West, autumn, spring, summer. That it's kind of hard to focus on one tea, isn't it? It's like, I want to love all my babies. I just want to drink them all. So this was quite a challenge for us. For those of you who are jumping into this, again, we're discussing the kind of thought process and results of this experiment we did over the last couple days, where we've only been drinking one shangpuer over the last 3 days. We've been changing out the leaves whenever we needed to, but again, this tea lasts so long that we've only had to do a session a day. So, yeah. Eric says, come visit the land of Provel before you move to Taiwan. Oh, we'll always be back. We'll be back for tea festivals and stuff like that. Jeremy says, I've settled myself on 5 these days. That's quite a lot still. Jeremy's I actually used to do a lot of, at the very beginning when I was starting out, I go 10 teas easy, 12 teas, just writing notes in my little notebook. So it's a good practice, I think. But just because you try one way doesn't mean the other way is not valid either. So there's kind of that false dichotomy. It's you drink too much tea, but also not enough tea. Somewhere in the middle, I think is okay. And yes, Eric, I've never done this before, where I've only focused on one tea for 3 days. Has anyone else ever done just one tea for 3 days? That's the only tea that you drink, no other tea. So it's okay if you switch out the sessions, like when the tea leaves run out, you switch it out for some more of the same tea. But yeah, just same tea for 3 days. This is my first time. You, Steven? Have you ever done it before?
First time. Maybe
Yeah.
accidentally and I didn't even realize.
What do you mean? Oh, maybe accidentally you didn't even realize. No, actually, the closest I've come to this is when I was in Taiwan with, again, my teacher, Ai, and we were drinking mostly her tea. So I've had the same tea from the same tea maker maybe like 2 or 3 weeks in a row, which is pretty interesting. But we still broke it up with a couple like her uncle's tea, you know, some teas that I brought. You know, I was mostly drinking their tea. But what Jeffrey's point is in evaluating this tea, there's 2 reasons why we do this. Number one, it can help you understand the tea more on like a flavor profile, aroma, texture, like the objective qualities of the tea, right? Because from day to day when you're brewing a tea, let's say you crack this tea open for the first time, and it just so happened that on that day you had some Popeye's chicken, you know, as we tend to do. Or you had, I don't know, a Coke or something. Your taste on that day will be a little bit different than the next day when maybe it's raining and you have some apple pie, or like, I don't know, your dog is shedding, so you can't smell as much. So, and then the next day you might have a different kind of like dish or soup, or maybe you're cooking all day. And when you're cooking, isn't it that you kind of get like your senses desensitized? Anyone who's a cook, I think there's like some kind of term for this when you're overloaded with smells and scents and textures when you're cooking, and so your senses become a little bit dulled. So on those 3 days, eating different things, being in different environments, being just different moods, you know, and your body's just changing during those days, you're going to be tasting the tea in slightly different ways too. So you might, you know, find the tea okay on your first sample, and then it's pretty good in your second sample, and then it's not so good in your third sample, and you're like, what the hell is this tea? Like, what's wrong with it? What's wrong with me? So spreading that kind of tasting over 3 days and concentrating only on that tea, you'll be able to pull as much of the personality of the tea as possible just by concentrating. And even when we're drinking tea, it doesn't even have to involve like other things. If you have, let's say, a black tea and then you transition into a white tea, isn't that going to be a little bit different? The tannins in the black tea will probably make the white tea just taste a little bit more bitter, more dry. I mean, it's there's so many compounds in tea that it's complicated and impossible to predict how a tea will influence the next tea. But for example, in Taiwan, I've had friends that tell me, oh, you if you want to sample a white tea, you need to sample it last. We will insist that you try the white tea last. And I was like, I don't get it. Isn't white tea like the lightest? So you usually go light to dark. That's like we borrowed from the wine world. You taste the light wine, white wine, then rosé, then red wine. But in Taiwan, I've heard, you know, a couple of people, not everyone, okay? Even in Taiwan, people are individuals. They have different opinions. But I've heard a couple of people tell me, oh, you can't have the white tea first. In the context of, we were tasting some Ruby 18 white. And they said, oh, you need to have the Ruby 18 black first and then the white. Because if you have the white first, it's going to affect the black. And I'm like, okay, I don't understand why, but there must be something to it, you know? So yeah, if you're able to just focus on one tea for 3 days, you'll be able to pull more of that flavor, even in different situations, and you're not going to be affecting your perception, your evaluation of that tea based on something else you just had before. Yeah. I mean, just imagine having a matcha. Like, I'll do this on some days. I'll have a matcha, then I'll have some oolong, then I'll have some pu'er, and then we'll have some soy milk, and then we'll have some, like, hojicha. So, yeah, you'll get to know your tea better that way. So that's just, like, the objective part, right? I think it's pretty straightforward. You guys so far, I was asking what you guys are drinking. I think, Eric, you were having some Mountain Oasis from the same vendor, Denong Tea. we picked this Danong tea because, again, it is the same tea that we had with Jeffrey during the interview. It is a very, very good Shangpo tea. And yeah, we took Jeffrey's advice to try to drink it for 3 days straight to understand it, but also if we want to invest in it more, just on a, financial level, we need to know what the range of the tea is. If it makes me feel uncomfortable after lunch, if I can't drink it on an empty stomach, if I prefer to have it in the morning, evening, afternoon, this kind of practice will make it easier for me to understand the tea. And then once you actually make the decision to purchase the tea, you really know what it's going to be like. Just like Jeffrey says, a lot of us, have heard that you're supposed to buy pu'er and then let it age, see what happens. But in reality, if you don't like the tea at the very beginning, it's not very likely that you like it as it ages. There's certainly room for a good tea to improve, or an excellent tea to remain excellent, but you can't turn a tea that you're like, it's okay, give it a couple years, it'll be awesome. It's not going to go from like, okay, to like, oh my god, amazing. You're probably going to be like, amazing to good, good to amazing. It's going to stay within those two categories, yeah. So far for us, Stephen, how do you feel about this tea after 3 days drinking it?
I still like it.
Yeah, I still like it. It doesn't get boring. That's another thing too. Is it the kind of tea that is really good just once, and then you've tasted it, and then you never want to really drink it again? Or is it something that you crave and want to have again? Because different teas have different personalities. It's like, I really like really challenging sushi, for example, like monkfish liver and so making Stephen make really funny faces. Sweet shrimp and what else? Octopus. But do I want to eat it every single day? No. Yeah, no. Which means I'd rather have a chicken farm than an octopus farm, right, Stephen? And then octopi are supposed to be really intelligent, so then, I know that some people don't eat them because they're supposed to be one of the most intelligent animals, and I think, Eric, that was you who told us that you don't like to eat octopus meat. The point being, yeah, you get to know your tea, Yeah. Eric says, I'm going to get hold of some Korean heicha. Seems pretty good. Joe's having some malfang. Let's say welcome to M. Lalibert and Lion and my sister, Charmaine. Nice to see you guys. Welcome to today's tea practice. So far we've been talking about the kind of objective why of what it would do if you drank the same tea for 3 days. But I think even more important, just because it's what Jeffrey approached it as, his point to doing the 3 days with only one tea is not so much about the flavor. If you go back to the interview, and for those of you who haven't seen this interview with Jeffrey, I really recommend it. It's a really good interview. It's just, the advice that Jeffrey gives is from his own personal experience, and that's the kind of advice that I really, really trust a lot. Because he's not afraid to go, talk about the ups and downs and the hits and misses, and I really appreciate that. I don't really like learning from people who are too perfect because there's something wrong. If there's nothing that's ever changed about someone's opinion, there's something wrong. And so Jeffrey has had his own journey through pu'er and has had so many different projects and has had the opportunity to just taste so many different teas. And so I really trust him when he says to try this method. And what he focuses on is less about the flavor notes and the aroma and the texture. Certainly really important. But he says, drink the tea for 3 days, no other teas, and then see how you feel, okay? And I'm not an expert on this. The people I can point to who I really listen to about this stuff are Jeffrey, but maybe even a little bit more just because consistently we've been following them, Shoen and Noah from Floating Leaves. If you guys follow their live stream, they talk a lot about trying to focus on how the tea makes you feel in different ways. There's aftertaste, there's structure, but also what does a tea do to you? And like Shoen said, it's like, oh, it's so like pie in the sky, it sounds weird, and it does. If you don't feel it, I keep telling people if you don't feel it, don't worry about it. But I'm going to change my opinion on this. If you don't feel it, keep drinking and you're going to get it eventually. I promise. It might take a year, it might take a day, it might take 10 years, but everyone who I've ever met since I started in tea, even if they started thinking they would never feel tea energy, they eventually are able to feel it. And people who I'm like, wait, like I used you as the example for someone who just doesn't talk about body feel, tea energy, what happened? And they're like, I don't know, it just clicked, and then suddenly it was there. And then I just changed my mind. I'm like, oh my God. And the same is true for me, in that, you know, I didn't grow up with a family who did any kind of like, you know, internal martial arts, or, you know, we don't eat organic produce. We don't, I mean, if you have any Filipino friends, we like to party, we like to sing karaoke, and we like to eat really, really, really heavily fried, delicious food. So nothing in our culture is really like attuned to us, like quiet it down, feel the chi through your body. You know, it's more like, oh, let's go eat some, you know, barbecued roast pig, which is awesome too. But what I'm trying to say is, if you don't feel it, still listen and see if something happens, okay? This is where Jeffrey's method, and also Shoen talks about this, being consistent with one tea will come into play. Because if you've never felt it, chances are maybe you've never done this method before, where you would allow the tea to do its thing. Because if you had like a shomei in the morning, dansong, oolong, danhong, matcha, right? 5 different teas in a day. And let's say each one is a different color. Like this is a blue colored feeling, bear with me. Red colored feeling, pink colored feeling. They all have different distinct feelings. But if you combine them all, you're just like, okay, I'm just walking around, you know what I mean? Like, it takes just focusing on that one tea, I think, for that energy to be apparent, or that feeling. And certainly over the last couple of days, the feeling of this tea has been more obvious to us too, because it's not other teas that you might question, like, is that what's making me feel this way? You know, like, even with us, we deal with the body feel of teas as well. But let's say we've had 3 teas, and then something hits me. Let's say during the Pu'er Love Challenge, when we were doing the side-by-sides of the pu'ers. And then I feel horrible. I think I know which one it is. I'm like 90% sure, but that 10% is not sure if it was a combination of all those teas, or if it was actually the one tea, but it hit differently in the second tea. So doing this, let's say, for 3 days, right? And you have a headache. There's no other tea you can blame during that process for that happening. Or if you feel amazing for 3 days, like you feel really happy, you taste things really well, you feel good, you sleep well, then you're like, hey, I mean, this tea does pretty well with me for my daily life, you know? And it doesn't have to be this mystic thing where you're trying to find the spirit of the tea in different parts of your body. It can be for some people. But does it simply fit your lifestyle? Does it fit you, your feelings, your moods, your etc.? Does it put you in a bad place? I know that I personally had teas that are really delicious, but the moment that I brew them, I become very bitchy and depressed, and like more bitchy than depressed, to be honest. I remember I brewed up this gyokuro. This is one of the first times I really realized the power of tea feeling. I brewed up this gyokuro that I'd been saving for Valentine's Day with one of my exes. Like, I'd saved like a little packet of this gyokuro. It's very, very precious tea, award-winning tea from a famous family, like the works. Yame gyokuro, you know, the works. And I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna save it for Valentine's Day. We're gonna brew it. We're gonna have some with some chocolate. We had some chocolate that we picked up from not Steven and me, you know, the not good. So me and not good, you know, we went to a chocolate store. We picked some chocolate to pair with the gyokuro and stuff like that. We had such a good morning. We were, you know, biking, sunny, wonderful day. We had some chocolate, and then I brewed the gyokuro, and then we drank it, and then we immediately got into a fight, and I was like, why am I so unhappy? Like, I'm really happy today. We're having chocolate, bike ride. I'm not working today. I'm suddenly really bitchy. And then I remembered that the last time I'd felt that way involved the same exact tea. And I don't know for sure if that tea is linked to the way that I felt the first time. But I do know now that whenever I make that tea, I will get very like upset and kind of agitated. And it sounds a little bit weird. I get it. But even on a like non-metaphysical level, the compounds in teas are really, really complex, and they interact with our brain chemicals in ways that we don't completely understand. So it's not necessarily that like, oh, the chi of the tea was so negative. Someone with negative energy harvested it. It's possible. I mean, I'm open to both sides. But it could also just be that your brain chemistry isn't working with that tea and what it has to offer. And so then you might not want to pick up that tea. And you're not going to notice it unless you're drinking and focusing with that tea and you notice these patterns, if that makes sense. Am I the only one who ever gets this way with tea? Because I'm going to tell you guys everything that I've experienced. Because why I do this is because if you've had an inkling of this happening before and you're like, am I crazy? You know, it's just tea. Like, isn't tea supposed to be healthy? Like, tea's good. All tea is good, right? And I would say I highly disagree. There's nothing that's completely all good, right? Everything in moderation, and it really depends on the person. And tea is also another one of those things where it's totally okay for me to not feel good with one tea, and then you feel fine with that tea. There are teas that make me feel not that great, but Steven feels good on them, vice versa. With Eric here, Tea Sleuth, he says, no, I have mood changes, but I'm crazy. I'm crazy too, maybe. But we've sat, me and Eric, and I brewed a dansong tea for him, and I was really pretty happy, and then I made him really upset. Like, I did something, the tea did something to his mood that didn't affect him in the right way, and yeah, so whether or not this makes sense right now, so be it. But better than me talking about it and talking about what I've seen before is if you do it yourself. So I really recommend, yeah, like maybe just now. If you have the time and patience, pick a tea that you want to study. Even better if it's a tea that you plan to invest in more. This is why this is in the context of the pu'er, right? We asked Jeffrey, how do you invest in pu'er? And I was kind of hoping like, oh, you have to look at the leaf bits and like look at, you know, you gotta like, you know, look at how big the leaf stem is and you'll be able to see if it's gushu or not. Like there's stuff like that people do, right? But I think that even more than trying to be cerebral about it is even if a tea is objectively award-winning, competition-winning, made by this family who's been doing tea for the last 10,000 years, right? Who cares if it doesn't feel good to you? Doesn't matter. And if the tea that makes you feel good is you walk to the store and then you get vanilla rooibos and you go home and that's what makes you feel the best, who cares if someone says, that's herbal trash, get that out of my face? Fuck those guys. That feels good for you, then that's a tea for you. But I suggest that you try it for more than just sit with it, right? And I'm saying sit with it as if I've done it before, but this, again, is my first time doing this, and I think it just shows how can we acknowledge this? As a community, we tend to value diversity and complexity and, you know, as many teas as possible. I tried 7 pu'ers and I tried, you know, I do that. That's me, okay? I'm not trying to call anyone out. But we tend to just skew a little bit more towards that, like, how many teas? 300 teas in my cupboard. I have one every single day. And it's so fun. Don't ever let that go away from your tea practice. I really love that about tea. Very little makes me happier than, like, seeing a whole, like, you know, range of bowl brewed teas that you can kind of sip and taste. But also, why not kind of pay attention and kind of dive deep into tea? Really get to know it, you know? It's like trying to find out about your friends from like one movie date. It's like, oh my god, you know, Emily was so amazing. She was so nice in that movie date. Like, oh my god, she bought me like popcorn and stuff. And then like you find out that, I don't know, Emily, I don't know, I hope there's no Emily's here. You like see Emily at like the restaurant and she's being a real bitch to the waitress. You're like, oh my god, I thought Emily was so nice. She like bought me popcorn. You got to know your tea that way too. The shortcut is just think about tea like a person. Can you really get to know a person if you only had it one time? Can you really get to know a tea if you've only had it one time or in the middle with other teas. You know, isn't it that the way that we get to know our friends the most is, you know, you sit down with them, that one-on-one conversation? Like, it's so fun when you're in a big group, but I personally find that the most I learn about a person is when I'm, like, stuck with them for 60 days. Steven, you know? Or stuck with them while you're traveling, just stuck with them in, like, an extreme environment that you kind of, like, just them, you know? Same thing. Yeah. So this is yesterday's session. I'm going to pull out another session of this Jade Leaves to make us the third day that we've had this tea. We're not using that much tea. So this is something else we've noticed about this cake, is that it doesn't take very much for us. And so we'll be able to calculate better how much we want to purchase of this tea in the future, because we're really not going to run through it too much. Or that means we can just buy the same amount and know we're going to age a lot of it. You know, I've been brewing in the same Gaiwan this whole time, and then next week I'm going to try this same method with a different pour. I'm going to pick one that I don't like. I already know I don't really like it, or maybe one that I'm on the fence about. I can be very, very open-minded, but there are a couple of pours that I have that I'm just not very happy with them, and I want to give them a chance. I'm expecting they're not going to feel as good as this tea, so I gotta be able to, like, let go of that. I want to go into it without a bias, and I think I can do it. I'm pretty good at changing my mind about the tea if it proves to me that there's something different about it. But I'll do this again next week, and so this is where it gets exciting. It's like, hey, when I was drinking Jade Leaves for 3 days, I didn't get bored, I didn't crave anything, you know, I wasn't like, oh, I wish I had some XYZ. It's like, if I'm with Steven and I'm stuck with him for 60 days, I'm like, oh, I wish that I could be with XYZ. It's like, why? Is there something wrong with Steven? You know? I mean, of course I miss all of you and all of my friends, but, like, there's nothing wrong with what I have for that 3 days. Yeah, let's spin this up again. Questions, thoughts, concerns. Crazinesses. So Lion says, sometimes a gradual caffeine crawl of tea gives me bad anxiety, especially if it's too much at once or too much building up over time. Yes, I agree with that. I think this is why we've gravitated a lot towards the more mild teas. So, for example, this Jade Leaves, Jeffrey explained to us that old trees actually often have less caffeine by ratio than a lot of the younger teas, because there's less of that kind of, like, they have more of the other nutrients, they have fewer polyphenols, so less of the potent compounds by weight in old tree tea. Which is why, if you notice old tree tea, if you have any old tree tea at all, just hit it with boiling water, let it sit. It's actually going to perform a lot more smoothly and a lot more light than a young tree tea. And if it doesn't, let me know. We should talk about it. But that's my tell. If a tea can handle boiling water for a long time, and the claim that it's old tree, that's like a pretty good tell to me that they're probably saying something correct about the age. The older the tea tree age that I see on the packet, usually the more smooth and mellow the tea tends to be if you try to hit it hard with boiling water. Conversely, the younger the tea leaf, it's not, I'm not talking about the potency. Like, these old tree teas can have so much to give, but it's not just in the flavor, not just in the bitterness, it's not just in that kind of, right? Younger tree teas tend to have more of that kind of, like, like, I think Shoen says this sometimes. It's like, young people have that young, like, energy, and they're kind of abrasive because we're young. And then, you know, the old tree teas have that kind of mellow, like, hey, chill out, dude, you don't gotta do that, like, just have a seat, dude, okay, just chill out. And they're better, right? I can't wait to be old. I get to be smarter. Like, I don't want to age like anyone else, but the older I get, the less stupid I am. So I'm really, yeah, I don't mind it. But yes, we actually, you know, tend to gravitate to teas that don't have as much caffeine because of it. I wouldn't call myself caffeine sensitive, but I do want to drink a lot of tea. So if I just, like, if I'm just banging matcha or banging, like, yeah, like fresh green tea. Like, it's just so much caffeine. M. Lalibert. Funny because my tea teacher said that green tea is linked to wood or wind element in Chinese medicine, which is linked to anger when imbalanced. Interesting. That's interesting because for me, green tea tends to not agree with me as well unless it's very, very well processed tea. So not only is it the type of tea, but also how well the person worked with the tea to process it. And Lilibert, if you want to talk about Chinese medicine, I'm not an expert in Chinese medicine or in tea processing, but as I've met people processing tea, I feel like what they're essentially trying to do is to bring the tea back into balance. So when the tea is picked on a day that it's rainy, they're trying to remove that excess moisture. If the tea is picked on a day that's really hot, they know that tea is kind of lacking a little moisture, so they're going to try to preserve it. If the tea is too rough, they'll try to make it smooth. If the tea is too light, they'll try to like push it a little bit forward. And so it's kind of like this balancing act, but not all tea makers have that kind of thought process. Some tea makers will just, follow 8 hours withering and then 3 hours pile withering, and then we'll kill green at this time because people have to go home at this time. It's true. In Taiwan, sometimes if you have a crew of people who are working on a tea, because you can't process a big batch of oolong alone, go on YouTube. If you look at the videos, it's not just a one tea master, but like a team of people who are working on every single batch. Those people got to go home, right? And they're working all season. So the longer hours you keep them in the factory, the more you have to pay them, and the more they're not going to be happy because they don't want to work long hours. So sometimes, even if the tea is not completed, there's still some kind of imbalance that could have taken a little bit more time to process. It kind of stays in the tea, and that shows up as a processing defect. But anyway, I find that almost any tea of any type can be amazing if the processing is correct. So yes, I agree, number one, that green tea could have a property that maybe causes some kind of irritation, whether physical or emotional. We have so many different schools of thought we could borrow from, right? I don't think any of them is completely wrong or completely correct. We got to borrow from everyone. I think that's what our secret weapon is we're not born into a tea. Most of us here, we're not born into a tea lineage of some sort, so we're not attached to one method of thought. But I think it just really depends on the tea, because I've had we were talking about S tier teas last night, just the teas that we absolutely loved from this last half year. And we have a white tea, we have a green tea, there's an oolong, couple oolongs, there's a black tea, the Mishang competition, oh my god, that shit's amazing. Pu'er, yeah, so every single category we have that the upper crust of teas. But honestly, if you look at all of them, they have something similar within themselves, in that they just have that level of balance. But that's why tea processing is super important, not just the type. Some green teas will make people feel uncomfortable. Some green oolongs will make people feel uncomfortable. You guys might have read this or heard this a lot, that green oolongs are not supposed to be good in the morning, or it's going to hurt your stomach. And that's because green oolong is so susceptible to those processing issues. The more water is inside a green oolong, usually the more fragrant it can be. It's very obvious. But that's why the really, really fragrant, and perfume, those oolongs, if you notice, will tend to degrade the fastest. Why? Because they smell good? That doesn't make any sense, right? The smell goes away. What about pu'er? The pu'er smell doesn't go away, right? It's a little bit more complicated than just the fragrance. And you guys have smelled teas that smell so amazing after the 2012 Chaumet, or old teas that have so much potency. It's actually someone did something right at the very beginning, both in terms of the processing and also the growth of the tea plant. But so many factors, and this is why it's important to do this 3-day experiment, because maybe in one day the way that you pour might be good or bad. And so the tea comes out good or bad, and you're like, oh my god, this is the best tea ever. But will it be the next day? And then will it be the next day? And will it be the next day? I don't know. So I'd like to do it more. Joe says, who said this wasn't Gushu? I think this is Gushu. Right? They're saying it's at least older than usual. I don't know the exact age of the trees here, but Denong tends to focus on ancient tree material. Why I don't know the exact age? It's because I don't care. It's comfortable. It's great. It's almost like a bonus to me if I know how old the trees are. I just want a range. So if someone says, these are old, there's an implication that they're like, these are the trees that produce material that's not gonna fuck your shit up. And I'm like, cool. I don't care how old the trees are. Cool. Sign me up. Yeah. Eric says, how many steeps do you tend to get from the Denong tea? Like, how many steeps do we get? Like 10 to 15 steeps? More? I would say 10 to 15 to keep it safe. Yeah, and we tend to do long steeps, okay? And we're using about... Oh, I already have tea inside. See, this is why I have to practice more to focus, because, yeah, my weakness is that I'm like a squirrel. I like, Oh, no, I'm not like a squirrel. I'm like a dog that looks like a squirrel. Like, I'm not a squirrel. See, I'm so stupid. This is why I drink tea, to make me smart. But I'm always like, wow, shiny things. And so... And I'm going to admit it, and knowing what your weaknesses are in your tea practice, it's okay. Like, that's totally okay. I can accept that I like so many different things in tea, and sometimes it makes me look like a golden retriever and the level of attention span of a golden retriever, you know? But that's okay. We're all different, and so I just find that, yes, a lot of our tea practice in the West is very like sampling focused, as many teas as possible. We don't see a lot of people be like, hey guys, I've been drinking the same tea for 3 days on Instagram. It's not Instagrammable if you have the same tea for 3 days, right? Yeah. Jeremy says that he loves that we're doing this with Pu'er. Yeah, it's Jeffrey's ask. If someone knows more than you in tea, listen to what they have to say and then follow it. And so I was like, Jeffrey knows a fuck ton more than I do about Pu'er. I trust him, especially if you've had good advice from them. I'm like, sign me up. Yeah, sign me up all the way. Jeffrey says 1 to 2 days at least. But I'm like, let's just push it all the way. Just do 3 days. And honestly, today, I want to go further. I feel like it's not enough. So after 3 days, we've had no other tea, and I've been seeing all you guys post your wonderful things on Discord, you know, like Junchiabari tea, Sansha, you know. Like, oh, like, that's so nice. But I still want to go further. Like, if Steven was like, hey, we're not having any other tea than the 2009 Jade Leaves for another week, I'm like, sure, yeah. I'm interested to see what we can find from it more, because we are learning a lot from this tea for sure. Oh my god. How is it like 3 days of no other tea, and that first sip is still like, wow. It's like, if you can feel this way about the tea, you should probably get a cake, because it's like that wow, like, whew, no other tea. I'm fine with it. We could do another week if you wanted to, Steven. And if you're wondering what I was doing yesterday with the matcha experiment that I posted, that I posted that yesterday, but I took those photos on Tuesday or Wednesday. So it's true, we haven't had any other tea than the Denong Jade Leaves since Thursday. 3 days now. Behind on my hellos, Michael, it's nice to see you. MST, Cha Chai Tea, Esther, nice to see you. Yeah, I'm glad you're finally home. Organic Tea Leaf, Shiloh, who's a Nuev_knowledge_ Orden. Cronan, Gabriella Green. Oh, all our friends are here. Welcome, welcome. We've been talking about the this experiment we did. 3 days straight with just one tea. We're not really bored. Yeah. What we've learned so far, yes, so Eric was asking how many steeps we got from this tea. We've started to see that this tea has a lot of energy to give, and I really, really enjoy that. If you are drinking a tea for 3 days and you find that it lacks a lot of energy, it falls off really quickly. You know, it's going to become obvious in those 3 days. It's like, why do I keep loading up my gaiwan? Like, what's going on? But you'll notice that we don't have that much leaf inside the gaiwan right now. This is maybe, let's say, like 3 grams at most, right? Very, very light. Yeah, so we're not using that much leaf. And even given using only 3 grams for 100 and some change gaiwan, we've gotten like 15 steeps out of it easily. And relatively long steeps too. Did you notice how long I steeped that tea? It was a while. It was like a hot minute. And I'm not scared, so we don't do infusions of the tea that are too fast. We don't need to. Which is also nice for the fingers. You don't gotta burn yourself too much. Yeah. Tea Path, welcome to today's tea practice. Esther, it's such a good experiment, great idea. Thank you to Jeffrey McIntosh, who gave us the idea. This was from his interview. I'm not sure if it was you, Esther, or someone else in the chat, but someone pointed out to us that the replay for Jeffrey's interview was just very difficult to listen to, and I agree. I had to listen to myself, okay? Like, no one likes the sound of their own voice. I don't. And the audio is terrible on it, but we fixed it. Thank you, Stephen. So if you would like the video link to that interview with Jeffrey, it's a 45-minute video. Have some pu'er. It goes by really fast, honestly. Like, we were like, oh my god, it's 45 minutes already. Really, really wonderful resource for learning about pu'er, how to study it, how to purchase it. And currently now, Jeffrey is not affiliated completely with any company. I think he's still really close to Denong, which is why he talks about them a lot. But he will still give an independent evaluation of Denong things, so I really trust him, you know? So he was the one who told us to do this experiment. Not just me specifically, but in the interview, he asked people to, if you would like to evaluate your pu'er, get to know it. Yeah, steep it for a while, you know? 3 days. He says 1 to 2 days in the video. I can't speak for Jeffrey, but I honestly think he's being very gentle about it because he doesn't think people can last more than 1 or 2 days. He actually does 3 days. Again, I can't speak for Jeffrey, but if you do 1 day, there's just too many variables. What if you had, I don't know, pizza that day? Then your taste will be completely different, you know? What if you had, you know, you went jogging 1 day and then you're watching Avatar: The Last Airbender for 10 hours, and the next day it's gonna be a different body, right? Oh, we've been watching a lot of Avatar for sure. Yeah. So far this tea has been very consistent. We've felt very good the last few days. I've been sleeping relatively well. I'm someone who doesn't sleep very well at all. It doesn't seem to be tied that heavily to caffeine. I'm sure it's related. But even on days when I have no caffeine whatsoever, I don't sleep very well. And I've slept pretty good. I've actually gone to sleep very quickly the last couple days. Can I attribute it to the tea only? No. But is this telling me that the tea fits in with my lifestyle pretty comfortably and well? Yes. Yes. And then on the flip side, if you start this experiment and you pick a tea that you like, and then you feel like something's wrong, like, I have a stomach ache, headache, I just don't feel right, etc. Is it because I've had too much tea? There's definitely such thing as too much tea. But I've personally done like fasts for a couple days where I'm having nothing at all. Okay, nothing. No food. And then I'll have a tea and nothing happens. Alright? So while it's true that you can have too much tea in a day and you'll need to eat afterwards, I noticed that the teas that are really, really good do not require you to eat afterwards. Okay? That whole like, oh my god, I'm starving! So much tea! And you've had like maybe 3 sessions? Okay, 3's a lot. Maybe like 2 sessions. Yeah, it shouldn't require you to do that. But you might notice some things about your teas for sure. Shiloh, it seems like this has been a very rewarding exercise, he says. Yes, it has been really rewarding. The tea tastes very good. It feels really, really good. Also, we're putting ourselves in different situations. Like we went out to meet a friend one day, drop off some a teapot that we owed him from a distance. We grocery shopping, work. We did the Chashi challenge data running off of this tea. It's a lot of data that we picked up. You know, I think you guys enjoyed the data, so it means that Denong Jade Leaves is pretty good for doing work. I noticed that sometimes Steven will pick a tea that I didn't know what he picked, and I'm trying to work, and then he'll serve it to me, and I'm typing, and then I'm like, oh man, like, oh goodness, it's like 11 in the morning. I'm like, what did you give me? What is that? Oh my god, like, and what I mean by that is I'm not paying attention to what he brewed me, right? I don't know what it is, so I don't think there's any like mental like, oh, Steven's brewing the Yokoro I don't like, so I'm gonna get mad. I don't know what it is, so I'm almost like blind tasting it, and I'm like, man, what the hell is that? What is it? Why do I, oh, God. And now I come to the point that if I feel unwell with a certain tea, there are teas in the shelf that I know I need to get to like undo it. Isn't that awesome? Like, it's like tools. It's like, oh no, this tea's terrible. Waba, take that. Jade Mountain Oolong, you know. Jade Mountain Oolong, I choose you. You know. So we have our teas we go back to whenever we need to feel okay again, and it's really rewarding. I really recommend that you try to do this. Get to know the teas in your collection this way. You'll get to know which teas make you feel good when you work. You'll get to know which teas make you feel good when you work out or sleep or need to hang out with a friend. There are some teas that are very, very good for having tea together with someone else, like get you really chatty and open. And then there are the teas that are like, so quiet, like I'm so chilled out. Just adds another dimension, I think, to the curating. Eric says this pour I'm drinking, which he's drinking the Mountain Oasis, is so comfy, but is making me very tired. I'm probably going to stop drinking at 15 or 16 steeps. It's a lot of steeps. Hatching Dragon, welcome to today's tea practice. Again, we're talking about the experiment that we did. 3 days with the same tea, 2019 Jade Leaves Denong. From Denong to Shampur. So good. Wow. That's just amazing. And even when we push it hard like this, I don't know how long I steep this, but it's almost like we're so spoiled with good tea, because good tea is very forgiving, that I'm not as good at brewing tea anymore because the tea is so forgiving. Like, I'm sure if, like, I don't know, like, oh, like, make sure you do 7 grams flash steep, you know, quickly. I mean, like, why? I'm lazy. Just let it sit for like 30 seconds. It's fine. Because I think this sat for more than like a couple seconds, and it's just totally, completely fine. There's a tiny hint of bitterness, but it's a very pleasant bitterness. Like, I like it in there. I don't mind it at all. Very, very nice. So yeah, think about it. Anything that you have in mind for the tea you want to test out for 3 days? I actually want to do another. I want to keep going with this tea, but tomorrow, Tea and Whisk here in Vegas has an online event for their fresh green teas, and I committed to go, so we'll have a breaker streak. But I think until then, we're gonna push another like 24 hours, right? So until we go to the class with Leo, we're going to keep drinking this Denong tea. So we're gonna do like 3.5 days. Almost 4 days. What's going to be interesting is after we drink this tea, what will we feel like when we switch to another tea? That's another thing too, okay? It's like, I don't know, y'all Canadians, if you go like you grow up with maple syrup your whole life, and then you come to like an IHOP and they have Aunt Jemimas, you're gonna flip the table, okay? But fellow like Americans who didn't grow up with like legit maple syrup, I don't mind Aunt Jemimas because I grew up with it. But now that I'm drinking maple syrup that's really good, like literally drinking maple syrup, I can't go back. So that frame of reference is also going to get built in as you do this. Yeah, man, like, Canadian friends, thank you for the gift of maple syrup you brought into our lives. We have so much of it every single day. And not a lot, but like, it's so good. Heidi, nice to see you. I miss seeing you and hearing your laugh. I miss seeing you and hearing your laugh too, in my head. I hope that you're all laughing together with us. We're so dumb. Mel, I love your analogy. She says, great way to explain the way you feel with tea. It's just so difficult to explain otherwise, I think. Hatching Dragon, teas for each energy and mood, time and place. Absolutely. Totally agree. Also, she's Canadian and there was definitely a cultural adjustment moving to the US. Yeah, I think that after we have this tea for 3 days straight, it's going to be a cultural adjustment having some bad pour. Yeah. Yeah. Good pour. It's like, it should come with a disclaimer. This pour is so good, you can't go back to your old pour. It's really tragic. There are so many teas I used to love, but then I love them in the whole like, oh, I love picking it up once in a while, and then I'll never drink it again for another like 6 months, maybe a year. I don't think you can really say you love a tea until you've like gotten to know it, like at least a day with it, right? And I say that again for myself. Like I totally, again, admit I've never done this before. I love tasting as many as possible, as much as possible, expanding the flavor library. But there's also a merit to going deeper. And again, I have Jeffrey to thank and Shoen and Noah to thank, along with so many other tea teachers who talk about this stuff. A secret is that almost every tea teacher I've ever met and really respect, we never talk about tasting notes. Almost never talk about tasting notes. It's almost like the secret revealed to me that they all are talking about the way that the tea feels, but they're waiting for me to catch up to that so that I can talk to them about that stuff. And this kind of practice is very conducive to that. So you can kind of explore the ways that a tea can feel differently. And, you know, for example, we feel like this tea has a little bit of heaviness in the chest, but just the tiniest bit that we think will go away. Like I'm talking like a slice, like a hair of feeling in the chest. Compared to like other pour, I've like gotten blasted in like the body with how strong a pour is. Some of you have heard the story. Someone poured me an 80s pour, really, really precious tea, and I really appreciated that they brought out this tea, but it was so strong that I had a cup, a tiny gongfu sized cup. I had one sip, and like I felt like I couldn't see anything. Like when you close your eyes and you see the back of your eyelids, you could see nothing. And I felt like my whole body like recoiled for a second. And I opened my eyes and I'm like, what do I say to these people? Like, what are you trying to do to me? You know? And it sounds crazy, but I'm going to say it anyway because it happened and I just want to, yeah, it's possible. So, yeah, think about how you might want to approach this challenge. Think about what teas you might want to use. If you want to learn more about this stuff, I really recommend, number one, the interview with Jeffrey, which we'll put up on the links on the bio in a little bit, on the Tea Curious IG profile.
What's up?
Another person, oh, it's up. Steven's amazing. And then another resource is Floating Leaves. Floating Leaves is just incredible. Shoen and Noah talk so much about being, you know, aware of how the tea affects you, being really, really, you know, careful to understand these different things. And yeah, they're just incredible, fantastic resources. So please go follow those two people. And then don't just follow them, follow their advice, right? Jeffrey told us 3 days, 1 tea. Shoen has said, study the same tea for 2 weeks straight. I think her approach is a little bit different because she says you can drink other teas, okay, but like every morning for 14 days, practice with the same tea and see what happens with it. So now we have like 2 people we really respect, 3 people, including Noah. 3 people we really respect trying to say the same thing, and follow. follow the teachers, you know. Heidi says, who is Jeffrey? Jeffrey that we've been talking about is Jeffrey McIntosh, who we brought on for the Pour Love Challenge series. Heidi, I think we met on Sohan's live stream. Jeffrey did another one on a different day. So we talked to a couple different, you know, pour friends of mine, and Jeffrey did an interview that we didn't have the replay up on until today, or just a couple days ago, because we got the audio nice and fixed for you guys. Link for that is in the bio. Other than that, thank you for joining us today. DM me if you decide to do this experiment. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. We appreciate you. Thank you. Bye. Do this thing. Bye. Bye. Oh my god, there's so many seconds left.